Welcome to the Texas Values Report. This is Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Great to be with you on a Monday in a glorious week in the state of Texas. This is a special segment of the Texas Values Report. Really our fault. We had some communication issues, some technology issues. I'm having some pronunciation issues. Some technology issues a couple of weeks ago when we wanted to have Representative Matt Shaheen on to talk about some work that we'd been involved in. There was some breaking news on that issue. I'll cover that in just a minute. If you're new to the show, we talk about the issues of faith, family, and freedom in the arenas of the courts, the legislature, and the media. And sometimes we talk about football, okay? The Super Bowl was last night, so we might find our way over to that topic since football season is officially over now, if you will, and baseball season has started, which I'm sure for my guest today, who I imagine is a Rangers fan, that's something that he's excited about. State Representative Matt Shaheen is going to be our guest today on the Texas Values Report. He is a Texas House member for several sessions. Before that, he served at the county level on the Commissioner's Court in Collin County, just northeast of the Dallas area, probably one of the most well-known suburbs, Plano in Collin County, in that area of DFW. And he's long been a friend of Texas Values and somebody who's not only supported the work that we've been involved in, he's led on that, particularly Senate Bill 12, a bill that protects kids from sexualized performances, lewd performances, some of the things that we see at these drag queen events, and so on. Representative Shaheen, welcome back to the Texas Values Report.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, I think I ate too much queso last night because it's still caught in my tongue. I'll work on my pronunciation throughout the broadcast. Look, it's good to have you on, and I apologize that a couple of weeks ago we had a couple things drop. But, there's always things to talk about. The issues have not changed. One of the things we wanted to have you on the show a couple of weeks ago was because we know that the state of Texas, Attorney General Ken Paxton's office, has appealed a ruling from a lower court in relation to Senate Bill 12. We'll circle back onto some of the legal stuff in just a minute. I'm looking at a couple of printouts, some drag queen sexualized looking events that are happening across the state. I think we've seen some decrease in that. I know Austin, apparently, I was told from my staff, is going to be having a quote-unquote family-friendly drag queen event in March, I think. It's on March 2nd, Texas Independence Day. Really? Come on. Okay. But look, there's been a growing concern on this issue. And not that legislation solves everything, but it certainly can be a big part of that. And that's where you dedicated a lot of your work last session. But let's stop back for a second in case our listeners haven't come across you before. Tell us a little bit about your background in elective office and why you initially decided to become a public servant.
Well, Jonathan, great to be with you, and thanks for all your help really on this bill and many others. I've enjoyed partnering with you and working together for past several sessions. But yeah, look, the Lord's blessed me. I've been married to my wife, Robin, for 30 years. And so we're going to celebrate that whenever the election's over and we can get some time together. But Lord's blessed me with 3 children. I've got 2 daughters and a young man that just graduated from University of Arkansas. Go Pigs! And then, but yeah, I've been in the in the Texas legislature since 2015, and before that, like you said, I was in the county commissioner's court, and I made that change because although I enjoyed serving as a county commissioner, more and more there were issues that were around social issues. So of course, I've been pro-life, but this whole dynamic of having to protect kids from being sexualized and the threats to traditional marriage and those types of things. So that's really what made me move from the commissioner's court to the legislature. And again, you and I have been side by side fighting these issues, and we're winning the culture war in the state of Texas.
Well, and we're talking with State Representative Matt Shaheen. He's our guest today on the Texas Values Report. Has been a leader on our issues for quite some time. Most recently, he was the House author for Senate Bill 12. This is a bill that protects kids from these sexualized performances, lewd performances, things of that nature. Many of the times, these are things that we're seeing at these so-called drag queen events or family-friendly drag queen events. Good grief, the marketing that has to take place to convince people and really, I feel like, deceive people, and sneak up on people in certain circumstances. And, I worked out of Collin County in the beginning of my career with Kelly Shackelford. I think that might have been when we first met, when you were on Commissioner's Court. and you were thinking about running. And so I know you're a public servant and that history goes way back, but I think about some of those days when we were working on some issues related to religious liberty, really trying to take some steps forward on the pro-life issue. And fast forward, here we are in 2024, and we're seeing it, sadly, every time you look around, there's another report of these sexual performances that are happening in front of kids. We know other states are grappling with it. So I think it was very timely for Texas to do something about it with Senate Bill 12. And look, you see some of the testimony during the legislative process. It, in many ways sort of gave, support or guidance. And, it was a recognition that, there's a lot of people that think these kind of things are okay. So even more reason to make sure we protect kids from them. So no easy task to get the bill passed. But now we find ourselves in the court system, but a lot of people still don't even know these things are happening. Talk to us a little bit about, what happens at some of these performances and why it's important to protect kids.
Well, if you remember, even several sessions ago, we were trying to protect women, including children, just be able to use their shower facilities and their bathrooms. And, we got a bunch of blowback for that. And I really think that was just the beginning of this attack on children. The Bible talks about the evil one roams the world seeking who he can destroy. And it's very clear that he's after our children. So again, the fact that we're focusing on this in the state of Texas is pretty darn important, because to your point, what you see in these videos with these drag shows, and we're talking about any sexual performance, but these drag shows where you have little children that are putting dollars in G-strings and just these.
Well,
lewd
no, it's outrageous, and I just want to halt you for a minute, because while we're seeing these as many examples, I think is because they're being so public and intentionally aggressive at targeting kids, trying to convince people that this is okay and it's not a big deal, oftentimes sneaking up on people that are not expecting it. And in some of these circumstances, almost completely nude. I mean, it's like, is there no standard? Is there no line? Is there no law? Is there no, we can't in any way have any protections in place. It just, so I think it's completely unraveled and moved to this place that I think many of us would not have expected. And so we're looking around going, hey, we need to do something about this now.
It's evil. There's just no question, this is evil. And, the legislation that we passed, there are significant consequences if you do a sexual performance in front of a child. You literally can go to jail, and the venue gets fined $10,000. So, the fact that we have to even pass that type of legislation, but it's necessary. And again, I think if you look at things across the board, whether it's pro-life wins or this type of issue, we've also passed legislation to protect children from online pornography. We've passed some of the strongest religious freedom bills in the nation. So again, because of partners like Texas Values and others, and all the time that you and your team spend down in Austin, and there's plenty of legislators like me that are taking action. We really are winning these culture wars, but it's a threat out there for our children. It's going to be a constant battle. It's not like this is ever going to end.
Well, look, you start to see these things happen, and you wonder, why are these businesses allowing it, right? For so long, you might have seen or heard of these type of sexual performances, but the business was 21 and over. People were checking your ID. And look, I know there's some establishments out there where you have, nude dancers or whatever. The idea that a child might be in there, I can imagine people that are even frequent those places would be like, you don't bring kids into here, right? There was just some, belief in this common sense understanding that these type of things are not appropriate for children, but not even at 18, right? You have to be 21 in a lot of these places. And so,
look, the objective is to normalize this.
Yes, exactly.
Children. That's the long-term range plan. Just to be transparent, I was skeptical of that claim many years ago, but no, it is very clear what the objective here. Again, this is evil. They're targeting children, and they want this sexualization of children to be normalized, and we're going to fight it, and we're going to win this battle. There's a lot of us out there. I mean, gosh, you have on the Blaze TV Sarah Gonzalez that goes undercover and then exposes a lot of these ridiculous shows, and she shows them on her Twitter feed and on Blaze TV. You all are doing significant amount of
Well,
work. There's
I
legislators like me, so
I think it's a good point. We're talking with State Representative Matt Shaheen. He is the House author of Senate Bill 12. This is the bill that protects kids from sexual performances, lewd performances in front of these. Many of these things we're seeing happening in these drag queen events. Sometimes now they're trying to call them family-friendly drag queen events to sort of, disguise it or to make people believe that, it's sort of tame, and all of a sudden you show up and there's someone there that's practically naked and dancing around as if, it's not that big of a deal and it's appropriate. And the kids aren't going to know the difference at that age. I mean, their instinct is not necessarily to go, oh, I'm not supposed to be here, right? I mean, they're probably confused or sort of shocked at times, the parents and the establishments. And if they're not going to do it, there is appropriate place for the law, for the government to step in and say, this is not something that we're going to allow. This is cross the line. Free speech? Are you kidding me? There's no constitutional right to have a sexual performance in front of a kid. But this is what we're seeing from the courts, right? Judge David Hittner, out of the Houston area, Texas Values filed a legal brief supporting Senate Bill 12. I think it should have been a slam dunk, an easy decision. And, really surprising some people with Judge Hittner. I've been in his court before. There's a long opinion that he wrote. So I'm not going to go too deep into, my concerns about a judge doing this, because I think this case is far from over. I think the Court of Appeals is going to get it right. But I do think some people were surprised to see this come from that court. But, look, I mean, some of this is sort of where people have pushed this issue and to go, well, I don't know, maybe it's free speech. It's just so not true. I mean, I do think the Court of Appeals will get this right. Paxton's appealed it, but we're still waiting on a decision.
Yeah, I mean, that distinction is very clear. I mean, there's unanimity as far as that issue. I think where the courts get confused sometimes is, if you look at some of the precedents with some of the previous Supreme Court cases. I mean, part of the challenge, like especially with like online pornography, is this community standards concept and all those types of things. And so I think they're trying to argue. That's one of the arguments that they're trying to make, or they're trying to say that this is targeting certain classes of individuals. And like, look, at the end of the day, this is not a debatable topic. You do not do sexual performances in front of a child. You do not sexualize children. And so it's just a battle that we've got to fight, and long term we're going to win this. Even if it means going to the Supreme Court, I don't know if that'll happen or not, but we're going to prevail on this, because the vast majority of people, of Americans, this is not a debatable topic. You do not do this in front of children.
Well, and this tells you a little bit of something about the ACLU. When you see them out there defending and protecting these sexualized performances.
Look, I want to be very clear about the ACLU and some of these other organizations. These are liberal Democrat extremists that are targeting children, and that's all they are. That's all they should be looked upon as. They are liberal Democrat extremists. They want to sexualize children. They do it in the guise of these, different rights that they're trying to make up. But again, you going after kids in Texas, we're going to punch you back.
So, look, I mentioned this before we came on, right? You talk about, sort of this satanic feel to some of these things, or an attack on our faith or attack on our values. Yesterday, Lakewood Church had a shooting there. And look, it saddens me that, there was a loss of life, but I think it was appropriate for first responders and others to be able to neutralize that threat, as some are calling it, and to shut down that threat. A woman came in to Lakewood Church, fired several shots. From what I'm hearing, she brought a 5-year-old with her, and the child's been injured, and I hope he recovers. But, who knows what kind of damage that woman in that attack would have resulted in, the shooter, with so many people at Lakewood Church. And to do it on Sunday, it's hard to not believe that part of that was not only an attack on the people there, but attack on our Christian faith, an attack on places of worship overall, which should be sacred. But that's what some people are doing in our society. I mean, they've moved so far. They've become so, direct in their targets, that we have to be on guard. That's some of the things I put a statement out about it, is always trying to be on guard. And thankfully, and you were part of this, we passed a law, I think in 2017, that says you can have security, you can have an access to a firearm in a church when necessary for security purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to make it very clear because there were some efforts to shut down those attempts for churches to defend themselves. So we wanted to make that especially clear, all places of worship, but it's very clear that we need to make just what you said, our places of worship, they're sacred. They need to remain so. And churches, synagogues, temples, whatever religious institution in the state of Texas, you most definitely have the right to defend yourself. And, God bless the security that was at Lakewood Church yesterday. And you're absolutely right, Jonathan. Countless lives were saved because of these trained security forces that were at the church and neutralized this individual. And yeah, our prayers for the little child that was harmed. And, I don't think we know all the facts around what was going on there. And I'm sure we will, but certainly prayers for the victims, even though this was something that they inflicted on themselves. But yeah, our churches, our synagogues, especially our synagogues, because of the sensitivity with
Israel
of Hamas. Yeah,
yep.
Absolutely. And I want it to be very clear. Our synagogues, our churches, all of our places of worship need to be defended and will be defended.
So before we wrap up, though, you talked about this a minute ago. We're talking with State Representative Matt Shaheen. He is the House author of Senate Bill 12. This is the bill that protects kids from sexualized performances, lewd performances in front of them. We know a lot of times these are happening at drag queen, LGBT type of events. And, we've seen some decrease. I think you've, and anecdotally, if you will, feel like maybe, and some of that is grassroots people stepping up and saying, hey, we don't want this in our community. It certainly helps when you've got a law in place, even though it's working its way through the court system. But this is our ability to respond, and particularly as people of faith and as Christians, right, to say we are going to uphold certain standards, because some of these are an attack on our faith. Some of them, I think, can be satanic in nature, and to not take that lightly, right, and to not forget that the government can't solve all the problems, all right? But as I was taught in law school, the law is a teacher. When you have something in law, it certainly sets a standard, or at least a baseline to say what we think is okay and permissible. And if people don't, right, if they step back and say, you know what, I wouldn't do that, or I'm not okay with that, but, live and let live, who knows what we'll see. And I think that's why, I appreciate your leadership, but I think it's something for Christians to get more comfortable with, particularly in this, huge election year, that we have to stand up for our rights. We can't just say, well, I'm just waiting for Jesus to come. Maybe he will, but we still have a responsibility to do something about these things and not just sit back and watch it happen. And
yeah. And, with Christians, right, we do this all from a position of love and compassion. I mean, clearly, a lot of these people are confused. Yeah. They're misled. They're deceived. But like you said, make no mistake about this. This is evil. The Bible warns us about this. And I think you really saw this explode when you had Roe v. Wade overturned and states like Texas outlawed abortion. The devil hates what God loves, and God loves children, obviously. And so we're going to defend them. Yeah, but this isn't going away. And you're absolutely right. I think Christians do to be vocal. And again, we have an advantage in that we know how all this plays out in the end of the book of Revelation. But so we do this from a position of victory. We also do it from a position of love. We're to share the gospel with everybody. I think our world needs it so desperately, and we need to continue to do that. But we also need to speak out on our biblical values, hold firm to those. Yep. Those are our foundation, and we can't budge from those.
No doubt. Well, look, I'm looking forward to a good decision by the Court of Appeals soon out of the Fifth Circuit. I know some great judges up there. And but this is working its way through the courts in other states, an issue I think you're going to see talked about a lot. And for people to get over the fact, I can't believe this is happening. It is happening. Now's the time to step up and do something. That's what we're going to continue to do in Texas, and that's what Representative Shaheen has done with his leadership. And so, listen, I know that the Cowboys were not in the Super Bowl. Bowl yesterday. I would have loved to have them have been, even though I'm from Houston, my boys are big Cowboys fans. They were born in the Dallas when, I was living up there for a little while. And, but, look, I mean, we know how important the state of Texas is. Give a little shout out, Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yeah,
giving it up to God, Yeah. And so
it was a boring first half, I have to admit it, but the second half was pretty thrilling, and then to go into extra quarters there. But yeah, I mean, look, it was a great game. I kind of didn't care who came out on top, but it was a fun game. Look, I ate a bunch of ribs and chicken wings.
I saw your post. Yeah, I saw that. I had to cut myself off at some point because I had some new little appetizer that I made that may not have been all that healthy. I had to remember my age. But, but there's a lot of talk about, coming out of the Super Bowl, discussions about our faith, where we're going as a country. And I think that's something we can all agree on, that we need prayer. We need to come together as much as we can. And some of these people, are just, they're having things happen in their own mind and their own bodies that they're not even in control of, right? And we've got to protect ourselves from those things. We've got to set some standards in place. And I think Texas will continue to lead on those issues, and we'll have a good outcome on this court case. So, Representative Shaheen, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for what you continue to do on this important piece of legislation and law. And thank you for being our guest today on the Texas Values Report.
Thanks, Jonathan. We got more work to do.
You got it. Well, I would have loved to have talked more about football with Representative Shaheen to, maybe not go down that road with the Cowboys fans. Somebody might get mad at me. But, it's interesting in these moments, too, culturally, we're sort of like everyone's on the, watching sort of the same thing. And not everybody, but, those collective moments where, you had some awareness. I mean, the Super Bowl has in many ways become like sort of this cultural event in America, if not the world, not just, a sporting event, right? I mean, you had performances, you had, some drama or whatever, with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and the commercials or whatever. So it's just interesting. We have these moments where we're sort of all talking about the same thing, and you kind of get a sense in some ways, what people believe, how people respond, what your expectations are. I was really busy in the kitchen because I was entertaining some teenage boys and trying to make some new food. So I didn't see a lot of that. I didn't see a lot of commercials. I didn't get caught up in a lot of different stuff. And aside from the game, which I enjoyed, and being a football guy myself, having a son that plays football, I've been around that a lot. So that's kind of where my focus was. But, I didn't even see the Lakewood shooting till 2 or 3 hours afterwards. And I grew up in Houston, Lakewood Church, this is where the Rockets used to play. This is a huge sporting event facility, right, that they took over. I don't know how many people they seat there, 10 to 12,000, maybe more. But and so when I heard there was a shooting there, my mind quickly went to, oh my gosh, how many people were shot because of what their attendance usually is. And so I'm glad that, things were minimized and neutralized very quickly. But I do think, and I hate that happened. None of us would have wanted that to happen. Joel Osteen was out there talking, and you could hear that was very sincere in his part. And I know he gets some, criticism from time to time, even from some Christians. But, it's hard to deny the role that he sort of played in the community. He is a very recognizable figure in someone who people look to and say, okay, I want to know what's he going to say and how is he going to approach the issue. And so, always soft-spoken. And so, but I was very concerned when I first saw that. And then I kind of took a minute to go, wow, this is a church in our state that was attacked, right? There's been a couple of incidents like this before. I think this one felt a little bit closer to me, being from Houston, knowing people that go to church there. And so I was reflecting on it a little bit, and I was upset about it. You've seen people try to charge the altars and do stuff, and you just can't feel that it's anything other than people really trying to get in the way, get in between you and God. Right? They want the focus to be on them for whatever reason. And maybe they're just not in their right mind when all this is happening as well. But that's what's happening in the moment. Maybe Satan is leading them in that moment too. But, because there's so much noise sometimes in our world. church is one of the few places where you can sort of have that quiet time where you don't feel like you've got to be so on guard, but we do, unfortunately. And, my kids know this. I don't talk a lot during church. Like, I'll sing, but, sometimes the kids have their little side chatter, and I'm like, no, I love, that's one of the few moments where I don't have to talk. I'm not, I'm just sort of listening and really trying to take it in during that time. And, no matter what faith you're a part of, America is probably one of the only places where that still matters. I was at an event this week in D.C., the National Catholic Prayer event, which is a wonderful annual event. There were priests and clergy there from Nigeria. You talk about some attacks on the Christian faith. It is unreal what some of these people are facing. Slaughters, massacres. I mean, just, they are targeted daily. Their life is on the line for their faith. And so we're not there. Don't get me wrong. But we still have that standard in those countries and places. A lot of times, nobody is stepping up and saying this is wrong or this is illegal. And so I do think it was important that we at least had that swift response of, hey, this shouldn't be happening in our churches. We're not going to tolerate it. We're going to stand firm to say this is wrong, to send a strong message for anybody out there that might be trying to do the same thing or consider the same thing. I would hope they wouldn't be doing that anywhere. And I'd certainly hope they would realize that the church is off limits and that we have the right to defend ourselves if someone does attack us. I do not want to be in that position, but if I found myself in that position, even if I didn't have a weapon, I know that I would be compelled to try to stop someone, to try to, and not only for the loss of life that might also happen, but just how it disrupts and how it can be attack on our faith when something like that happens in such a sacred place. And so I know I'm about out of time here. And there's a couple of different events I want to mention. September 13th and 14th, we have secured, confirmed everything. Speaking of churches, Great Hills Baptist Church will have our annual policy event there. I'm going to be in Laredo next week. If you want to come and see me down in Laredo, February 19th, there's a prayer event that we're going to be a part of for candidates. There's also one up in North Texas. We'll put some information about that. And next week, early voting starts. All right. So, we'll have more interesting conversations publicly and on social media. We've got a great website, though, freevotersguide.com. Free, F like in Frank, votersguide.com. So you can find out where the candidates stand on the different issues. Main election day is March 5th. So great information there. Check out our main website, txvalues.org. You can follow some of those links. And hopefully you'll be inspired to donate to us. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Please consider donating to us. And that's how together we'll protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.